Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Anita?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm here in Argentina and I'm saying hi to John, who is in Indianapolis, the other part of the continent. So, can you please give us a brief introduction of who you are, what you do?
Sure. My name's John Mundell. I'm located in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is in the central part of the United States. I work as an environmental consultant, and I own my own small environmental company. I'm married to Julie, who's been a partner in this adventure for the last 25 years. And we have 4 children and 4 grandchildren. And we've been involved in environmental work, I have for the last 4 decades.
Great. I saw that you studied engineering. And in fact, I'd like to know what was your first motivation to follow and study this career? And when along that process did you decide to dedicate yourself to environment? Because it wasn't known to work for the environment 30 or 40 years ago.
Sure. Well, that's a really good question. Well, I would say one thing, my career choice as engineering, I think was influenced a little bit by my location here in my state of Indiana. We're very close to a university called Purdue University, and they're very famous. Neil Armstrong, who walked on the moon, went to Purdue University. A lot of technology and engineering famous people come from that university, many Nobel laureates. So as I grew up, you're influenced by hearing about those famous people as far as engineering goes. So that it developed over time. When I went to Purdue, I entered engineering, but I didn't know what type. And then I realized the seeds of this idea of the earth were planted in me many years before then. On the first Earth Day, 1970, I participated as a 13-year-old boy cleaning up pollution, cleaning up the roadways near my school. And the end of that day, I was just filled with such joy because I saw how we could clean up the earth and take care of trash and all that. And then when I came to Purdue, I realized there was this thing called geological engineering where you could study the earth and you could do things with it. You could understand how things work, like how water moved and how the soils and the geology came to be. And there was a career for that. And so I was very excited. And so at that time, I was more interested in, putting roadways on the earth and building dams and skyscrapers and anything to do with putting and dealing with things on the earth. It was only, though, that when I came out of Purdue after a master's degree, that there was a lot of things going on at that time. Pollution was being seen in the rivers, and there were even rivers on fire in the United States. There was a thing called Love Canal, which the pollution caused people to become sick in some communities. And so I thought, this is an opportunity. I am interested in the earth, but I also have this desire to help the environment. And I became one of the first environmental engineers dealing with this in the United States. And I began a career very early on to help clean up the earth, clean up all that pollution that had been put on the earth over the last several hundred years. So that was the challenge.
30 or 40 years ago, it was cleaning, but now it's much more than cleaning. It's developing technologies that stop the pollution from being created. So how it went from one thing to the other?
That's a very good question, because back, when I started, that was the thing was, cleaning up the water and the land, because so much contamination had been generated from all the industrial manufacturing that had occurred over the last several hundred years. And so all that work was involving technologies that cleaned up pollution. Over these last 10 to 15 years, though, we have other challenges. We have climate change causing one of the biggest challenges in the world. And so what does climate change do? Climate change affects everything on the earth. It affects how much rainfall occurs in different parts of the world. It affects flooding of rivers. and the rise of the seas. And all of those present engineering challenges. You know, all of our societies were designed for certain kind of conditions that we expected. We would look backwards as engineers on data that was collected, you know, the last 100 years, and then try to predict the future. Well, that's been very difficult with climate change because things are changing. We can no longer just look backwards. We have to look forward to dealing with some of these challenges. And so some of the technologies that we're using nowadays involve even things like machine learning and artificial intelligence to help predict things that have never happened before. So as an engineer, it's a very exciting time. It's a challenging time, though, and one of the biggest challenges is getting people to wake up and realize that this is the issue of our day and that we need to change how, not only how we live, but how we live as society, how we live as communities.
A few years ago, the Pope launched a new encyclical, and you were there from the beginning. When you read it, did you see it going along all this time and having this magnitude it has right now?
You never know what happens when a pope unleashes a communication and what God will cause from that and the Holy Spirit. But I was very excited when I heard that he was going to write an encyclical on the environment. In fact, we knew a couple of years ahead of time that this was in development. And so that was very exciting. But, you know, because he had not issued very many things, we didn't know, is it going to be very theological and philosophical, where you didn't really quite know, you know, how to incorporate that into your everyday life? Was it going to issue a challenge to us all? We didn't know that. And then, you know, when Laudato Si came out and I began reading it, oh, you can imagine my excitement, because really the first few chapters deal with what is the condition of the earth as it is now. So there was a lot of science and engineering and analysis that helped set up the problem that we were facing. So as an engineer and a scientist, I was just blown over by the Pope's willingness to consult those around him and provide a basis for this call to protect the planet, to care for creation. And so that I thought was very exciting. But then also what was really astounding was this call for him for ecological conversion, to change our lifestyles. That was a real challenge, because many people, you know, when popes publish an encyclical, they put it on their shelf and they think it doesn't affect me. But this is a case where what he was talking about affects every one of us, and how we actually live out our faith and how we live in society. So it was an exciting thing. It's been a challenging thing because, quite frankly, not everyone has heard that call to do this, and we still are facing the motivating not only Catholics worldwide but everyone worldwide to make changes in how we live and how we take care of the earth.
This word conversion has always been connected with religion. So what is the ecological conversion? What does this mean for everyone?
Oh, that's a really good thought. Yeah, you're right. People say, oh, I've been converted to Christianity. It means I've changed my belief systems. It's very rare that we talk about a conversion associated with something else. In this case, an ecological conversion. What I think is different here about being converted with just your belief systems is this is also a conversion not only of the heart and the mind, but of also the hands and the legs. You have to be converted to change your behavior. Oftentimes in Christianity and Islam and Judaism, you know, we get stuck on how we think about God or how we think about life. Very rarely do we focus on how we put that belief into practice and how we make it concrete, and whether that is the yardstick for measuring what kind of Christian or Jew or Muslim that I am. And so the Pope is asking us for ecological conversion. Why? because it's needed, because we're all in this together. That conversion is all about actionable items. We can no longer just only think or pray or sit by the sideline and watch what's going on. We have to take our prayers and our thoughts and turn them into actions. And that's what's exciting about ecological conversion. To me, it's an action conversion, not a thought conversion or just a belief conversion.
Great. Thank you very much, John.
Great talking with you today, Anita, and it's always good to see you.
Always good to see you, John. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.